All right. Welcome, everyone. Good evening to the Cortez City Council Work Session Special Meeting. Today is Tuesday, February 13th, 2024. It is 6 p.m., and we'll go ahead and call this work session to order. First up, we have an update from Municipal Judge Beth Padilla.
Good evening. You guys called me faster than I expected. I'm just here to provide updates quarterly and answer any questions that you have. I was last here in October of last year, so it's been a few months. We do have our totals from 2023. We had 104 court sessions, so we were averaging 8.6 court sessions per month. So typically court is handled Monday mornings, so that would be 4 times per month. However, if anyone's in custody, we are holding in-custody hearings, typically Wednesdays and Fridays. So just to give you an idea of what workflow looks like, we're 8.5 hearings on average per month. So far this year, we've already had 15. We're only 2 weeks into February, so quite a few hearings, which has kept us very busy. I feel like I always echo this, but I can't say it enough. The court truly would not function without Miss Odell. I mean, not at all. And we are down a person. So our court staff is very small. It's Miss Odell, and we have an assistant and myself. And I'll tell you candidly, I don't know how to do the things Miss Odell does. So I'm not helpful for her. And she's been doing 2 people's jobs for 6 weeks. So incredibly grateful to her. I know she's working a lot of long hours and weekends, and we really would not be functioning without her. So continue to express my extreme gratitude to Miss Odell, and I hope that she stays forever because it flows very well with her. I think you're all aware that we did launch our outreach court in August. We had, last year, 6 outreach court sessions, and some of that is because our backup judge, Judge Wanger, has to handle conflict cases that I have. I'm still a practicing attorney in our community, and so sometimes I do have conflicts that I can't be the judge and also be involved in someone's case, maybe in district court. So when that happens, we have Judge Wanger cover those dockets, and he's graciously agreed to do outreach docket as well. So just because I have a conflict on a case doesn't mean that a defendant is not eligible for outreach court. We have received some pretty positive press. As a result of outreach court, we've so far had 3 people successfully graduate. 2 of those individuals have housing vouchers, which is a huge deal. And so they have not yet secured housing, but they have a pathway to securing housing. One of those individuals reported, I think, over 30 days of sobriety. One of the individuals was able to obtain his ID, Social Security card, Medicaid card through his work with Outreach Court. And really that is not my work, that is the work of our community partners. So that's Pinion Project, Access, the Recovery Center. And so incredibly grateful for those organizations that are providing support to us. As a reminder, Outreach Court does not require any additional funding from taxpayers. It's not costing the city anything additional. Essentially, we're partnering with local agencies that are already serving these populations and essentially giving them a benefit of a diversion in municipal court. As you may recall, if anyone has restitution, they're not eligible for outreach court. So if someone has caused damage to another person, they're not eligible for their case to essentially be dismissed after successful completion. I'm not sure how many people we have in outreach court right now, but quite a few. Sometimes people are still picking up new cases, and sometimes they're not. And so I really do feel like it's a positive shift that is going well. We are continuing to do unsupervised probation. Really, that's only a name. That is a way for us to order community service. A pretty typical sentence in the municipal court, just to give you an idea, if someone only has 1 case, for example, of perhaps trespassing and they plead guilty, we're typically doing 3 days suspended jail. So they don't go to jail if they don't get in any more trouble for the next 6 months, if they do about 5 hours of community service, and if there are any allegations of drug or alcohol use in the police report, they're required to do an evaluation. We're not ordering ongoing treatment because we don't have a probation department, and Miss Odell can't do anything else. She's at capacity. So we are just essentially connecting them with these local partners, and then allowing them to decide whether they want to continue treatment or not. This last week, for the first time, I had a defendant come to court and ask me to order her to go to inpatient treatment. This was essentially a mechanism that she felt like if she had a court order, she could secure a bed date. And so I did do that. That is not a typical sentence. That was based upon her actually coming to court 2 weeks in a row and asking for that, and that was based on her therapist recommendation. So I do think people are receiving treatment, whereas maybe before they weren't. I know the community service is going well. In meetings with Pinion Project, they've indicated that the space has never been so clean, the leaves are raked, things are functioning nicely. We don't tell people where they have to do community service. They can do it anywhere they want in the community, and then they just submit proof to us. So overall, I think that court is really working well. We're continuing to partner with our interpreters. We have a member of our community who is deaf, and so we have to use 2 interpreters for him, and Ms. Odell graciously coordinates with those 2 interpreters who are actually appearing remotely through our WebEx capabilities, which is like Zoom. So they're not charging the city to drive here. And we're also able to use interpreters for other languages through WebEx as well. We have, I think, 4 court-appointed attorneys at this time, and those are members of our community that are willing to take our cases at the state rate and provide criminal defense representation to individuals that can't pay for an attorney. I will say that we are really fortunate that some neighboring communities that are much larger than us are struggling to find attorneys willing to do that. And again, I credit Ms. Odell. Her relationship with the local bar is stellar, and she coordinates attorneys to be on call. And these are lawyers that are working for the city at a fraction of their hourly rate. They're willing to take these cases at the state rate. So I'm incredibly grateful for our legal community. Overall, I think things are going well. I don't know if you have any questions or concerns.
Beth, can you talk about any trends that you're noticing with the youth in Cortez?
I'm not seeing a ton of youth in my court. I do work in the district court, and their juvenile dockets are full. There are quite a few young people having contact with law enforcement, I would say. Probably Chief Knuckles is a better person to answer those questions as to what numbers might look like. We are not seeing a lot. Typically, we'll see traffic issues, so young people speeding, texting, driving when they don't have a license, that kind of stuff. And if a juvenile is in court, we're continuing the practice of requiring them to write an essay because it's really the only thing that I know their parents aren't going to probably do for them, right? If I just fine them, their mom or their dad might pay it. And sometimes there are fines, but essays are a pretty common component of juvenile sentencing.
We're preparing the land use code, and some of those violations are civil in nature, not criminal. Your court handles that civil complaint. Have you had any civil violations in the city of Cortez that you've handled yet, or is this going to be something new for you?
So we've had a couple land use violations. So I've been on the bench since November of 21. We've probably had 5. And that's just from memory. Ms. Odell probably knows exactly. I have 2 right now that are pending. So there's certainly sometimes an issue. When I see the files, it looks like the code enforcement is really trying to work with people extensively for a long time before they're bringing them to court. So I will see many reports with months and months of contact. So it does seem like code enforcement is trying to get people to follow the rules without coming to court. Occasionally, we have cases in court. Yeah,
and I won't speak of a specific case. That's inappropriate. Yeah. But I do know that there is one that code enforcement's been working with, and finally enough is enough, went to court, and they were given more time, so they were allowed to continue to break the law. Help me.
Sure, and I think that's that's a fair question, and I think it's something that every judicial officer struggles with, right? So once it comes into the courtroom, there's a process, right? So they might get attorneys, they may need discovery, they may need a copy of the file from the city attorney's office. We also have to look at what is the end game, what are we trying to get them to do? And especially in these code enforcement issues, we want them to typically clean up whatever's happening. You know, there are limited things as to what I can do. And I think the hope is once they have contact with the court and they know they have to come to court again, that behavior starts to change. Sometimes it doesn't. And sometimes certainly the wheels of justice are slower than we would hope. But I think we also have to make sure we're giving people a process, a fair opportunity, and that we're trying to achieve that end goal.
Do you see any seasonality in terms of offenses like, so for, you know, public intoxication and things like that? Is that more of a summertime, spring, fall thing? What are trends like that?
I would say yes, typically. As far as hearings go, you know, in August of last year, we had 10 court sessions, for example. That was one of our busiest months. Last March, we had 12. I don't know what happened in March, but I do think that we see more offenses in the park specifically as the weather gets nicer. The thing is, you know, some trespassing, for example, if someone's unhoused, we're going to see those all year because they're still not allowed to be the places they're going. I don't have specific numbers. I'm sure Miss Odell does. Maybe not off the top of her head, but I think we could get those numbers as far as how many offenses are occurring per month, or that are coming into the court. I think that she had some information. Give me just one moment. I thought we had some other numbers, but I apologize. I know that we had more. I think we had more cases in 2023 than in 22 overall. And I think there's been a steady increase since COVID, because during COVID things got a little strange, we'll just say that. So there were fewer cases than typical.
So I had a question about the outreach court. Are you tracking numbers of people that you see, people that you're then hopefully not seeing again after that? Because I think, especially probably for the community, more for the community partners than the court, there could be some potential grant funding opportunities and things like that to help support that, as long as we're tracking that data to show that the program's working.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I don't know that we're necessarily tracking recidivism at this point. It's been a big shift for our community to implement the program, and so I think we're kind of learning as we go a little bit. Long term, yes, I would love to track more information. Essentially, if someone comes into court and they say they want to be in the outreach program, we say, okay, you need to go talk to Pinion Project and identify who your local partner is going to be, who are you going to work with, and we set them on the next docket. They come back to court and say, Judge Padilla, I want to work on housing instability, and Ms. Bueno Valdez from Pinion Project is going to help me do that. Great. Go forth, do that for the next 90 days, and then come back and tell me what's happened. If they pick up new cases, they have to come back to court. Okay. We don't just let them free pass, do whatever for 90 days. So if they have contact with law enforcement that results in a citation, they do come back into court. And then there's a conversation about what happened. You know, do you still want to be in outreach court? Is this related to the issue, or do we now have another issue? And that sometimes happens where someone will initially say, I want to work on housing, and then they're picking up alcohol-related offenses. And so then the question is, don't you really need to be working on substance abuse and housing? These are both issues that you have. So it's a little fluid, but they have to come back in if they pick up a new citation.
That was one of the other questions I was going to ask is, are you providing some direction on which channel they pick, or is that just, or is it more like they're like, hey, I have this issue, and I choose to address housing, even if there are obviously other issues as well?
So the American Bar Association model, which is what we're using, is that the judges do not tell them what to do. Okay. It has to be voluntary. It has to be their choice. Now, do I sometimes ask questions like, Mr. Kiefhofer, I see that you've picked up a new alcohol case. You know, what are you going to do about that? And are you sure we shouldn't be dealing with that? And so I think there's strong hinting, but I don't specifically order what they're going to address. I haven't had anyone pick something that's not their problem, their problem, right? I mean, I think people are pretty aware of like, I don't have a stable place to live, or I keep getting in trouble for drinking in the park, maybe I have a drinking problem. And a lot of these issues are intertwined. And so sometimes if we can get stability in one area, my hope is that stability might flow from that. But no, we don't order them specifically to address certain things.
Is there, to get back to the recidivism piece of it, if you are seeing people again a second or a third time through that, is there any sort of escalatory, like you need to address 2 of these problems now instead of 1 to stay in the program, anything like that?
There really isn't some drug court models will have sort of like a carrot and stick, like they'll impose sanctions, that might be jail. We don't do that. Essentially, this model is if you don't want to participate in the program, we're going to put you back on the normal docket, and whatever happens, happens, whether you go to trial or you enter a plea. And I think that, realistically, entering outreach court doesn't solve the problem, right? It's like the first step toward identifying the next steps. So we see repeat people. We see people that maybe have graduated and then picked up another case. I don't think that means it's not working, because when they're partnering with these local community agencies, they're still making progress on the issues that they're facing, right? So they still have the housing voucher, even if they pick up an alcohol in the park case. And they still have their ID, so now they can get Medicaid. And so I still think we're making progress, even if it's not like picture perfect, oh, that person is no longer in the courtroom and no longer, committing any crimes.
And then sorry, I just had one last question related to that, was just for the drug and alcohol evaluations, what are the funding mechanisms for that? Does that flow through the city? Does that flow through partners?
Yeah, great question. So when I first started ordering that, there was certainly some concern that, I will just tell you, was unfounded concern that I was going to put people in jail because they couldn't pay for the evaluation. That's never happened, ever. That will never happen. The city council, you all have approved in our budget for evaluations to be covered. I think we've paid for like 3 or 4, not that many, because most people have insurance, Medicaid, Medicare, Indian Health Services. And I don't tell them where to get the evaluation. They can do it anywhere they want. And so that allows a lot of flexibility. We also have a lot of people in our community, I think just because of our location, that maybe don't actually live in Cortez. They might live in Arizona or New Mexico. And so I don't require people to stay in the city of Cortez when they have their case. If they need to go home to Shiprock, that's fine, and access services there. Or if they want to go somewhere else, that's not a problem. So we do have funding available, and I tell them, if you cannot pay for this, contact the court clerk or court administrator, and Ms. Odell has funding, and rarely does that happen. And I tell them that up front so that then when they come back 3 months later and tell me they haven't done the evaluation, that's not a reasonable explanation, because they know there is funding available.
Great, thank you.
Judge Padilla, thank you for giving us an update. It seems like as the program goes on, as you learn more, we also have more questions, so thank you for coming in and answering those questions, and I'm sure if council has any additional questions, they'll just email you directly.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Yeah. Right before we move to our next item on the agenda, I just want to say that Mayor Medina is excused for today's meeting, so as the Mayor Pro Tem, I will be chairing, so I just wanted to make sure to make that explicit. Okay, and we'll go ahead and invite Chief Roy Wilkerson and Battalion Chief Rick Spencer from the Cortez Fire Protection District to give us an update.
There we go. Okay. Good evening. Thank you for allowing us to come in. First of all, I want to tell you I'm used to walking around and talking, so if you see me start to move, I'll make my way back to the mic. With me this evening is Battalion Chief Rick Spencer, and he will be assisting with answering questions at the end of the presentation. What we want to do is bring everyone up to date as to what is occurring within the Cortez Fire Protection District. There's been a lot of changes. We have a future that we feel as though is bright, but we have a couple hurdles that we have to get over. So this presentation is going to present those items, and it's also going to give you an idea of the direction that we are going. There's been some changes that have occurred here in the recent months, and with those changes, of course, we have growing pains. So we want to make sure that everybody is aware of those growing pains and the direction in which we're heading. Right now, we have 15 career firefighters, and we're made up of career firefighters, reserve firefighters, and volunteer. The administration has over 75 years of experience in the fire world. So, in my opinion, that is incredible. A lot of cities don't have that much experience. And with that comes, of course, some change. So what we're trying to do is make this change advantageous to not only the fire department, but of course, our customers. And our customers are in the district and throughout Montezuma County. We have been busy. And as you can see, every single year since 2013, we have gone up in numbers. As of today, and this is one of those numbers that continuously go up, but as of today, we were at 532, and our projection, we're looking at least 4,700 for this year. It just keeps going up and up. We're one of the busiest fire departments per firefighter per run in the state of Colorado. It's kind of amazing, you know, Cortez, but we are. In 2023, 2,788 runs were within the city itself. And as you can see, where we're going to be ending up projection-wise in 2024. So a little bit about the department. We have 3 different stations. We have Station 1, 2, and 3, and we run out of Station 1, which is on Washington. We have 2 engines or pumpers, and you can see, and this information here is the age, and that's going to come back into play. We have 3 brush trucks, 1 wildland engine, 2 water tenders, carry water to locations, 1 ladder truck, and light rescue. As you can see by the check marks, those are all older than 10 years. NFPA states that a frontline piece of equipment, a truck, should be younger than 10 years, replaced after 25. We're right now looking at a grant to be able to replace one of our tenders, and it's the one from 1991. The reason is because they have brand new tenders out there that you can drive and pump and squirt, which is extremely useful in wildland across the board. It's good technology that we can really use. As you can see, everything is getting older, all of our apparatus, and in 2022 we had quite a high maintenance cost, and that's just these here. So it's getting older and it's costing more money to keep them up. So how much does it cost to clothe, equip a firefighter? We're just looking at the equipment that they carry into a structure fire. We're mainly gearing this towards structure firefighting. We're not talking a lot about wildland, and we don't have enough time to go into that aspect. We're just staying on structure. So you can see, and this came off the internet, but it's pretty darn close. We have not taken into account radios. Motorola radios can be anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. It all depends on what type of radios they are. Training, specialized training, which is another level. We're talking about like hazmat training or confined space training, other than just firefighting and wildland. The tools themselves, as we know, you have a specialty tool that's going to cost more money. And of course, they have to go through NFPA, they have to go through certain certifications for being a firefighter tool. A good indication of this would be a ladder. You have your ladder that you can get at a Home Depot versus a ladder that you're going to have for a firefighter. Those two ladders are not the same, not even close. So, our customers, who we run on, everyone in this room potentially, what are your expectations? For us to be there when you call us. That's what we do. Arrive on scene as soon as possible. NFPA has standards. It states that 90% of the time when that call goes into dispatch, they have 1 minute to get it out to us. We have 1 minute once we receive that to get out the door. That means putting all that equipment on that was in that slide before and getting out the door. We have 4 minutes to get to our location, that the call. Sometimes that's easy to do, sometimes that's not real easy to do. It all depends. We have a large district, and we're not going to get there in 4 minutes. Hopefully the average is close. So sometimes we get there quicker, sometimes we don't. We also accompany EMS on calls. Most of our calls are EMS calls. We would wish we had no calls at all. That would be a great fire service. But unfortunately, we go out on EMS because they need our help, and fire. And we want to make sure that our customers get state-of-the-art service. That costs money. We go to trainings. Right now we have some that are away at training. We have training of hazmat that they have to go away to, confined space, and the list goes on and on. As we said before, our run volumes are increasing. Run volume has a tendency to cause personnel to get burned out. Unfortunately, it's one of those items in the fire service that occur. Our call volume, we're finding that we're starting to get more into substance abuse calls, which causes our runs to go up. And we'll talk about that here in just a moment. Building codes, new construction, these are concerns, as we have in the other items that we had talked about, bullet points. New construction, it burns hotter, houses are tighter, which causes firefighters to have to go into higher temperatures. The new construction, we'll call it break easier. You don't have steel, you don't have wood that's as good as it was 50 years ago, 25 years ago. It burns through quicker. You have glues, they all burn quicker. So when that happens, we have structural collapse. And if you have firefighters in there, they're going to be within that collapse. This is part of that training that we go through. Building codes, same idea. Building codes are one of those items that we depend on to make sure that everyone is safe. We want to make sure that those building codes allow for everyone in this room to be safe in the case of a fire, and also our firefighters. Retention. We have a difficult time keeping firefighters until here recently when we gave them raises. Right now with our finances, that was difficult, which I'll get into in here in a couple of minutes. Also find qualified personnel. It's hard to get people to come here for what we pay. It's very difficult. Getting qualified people, we do the training here. We put on trainings for firefighter 1 and 2 and the hazmat that we can until they get that specialized training. So we train our own, if you will, throughout the county, but unfortunately, we don't have a lot coming in. So we have to rely on who we have here, which is fantastic. The crew that we have now is, I can't say enough good about them. Other concerns, reluctancy to change. We have an aging population, people moving in. We have a younger population. And again, we pull people. And if you remember on the first slide, the majority of our career have less than 10 years on the job. So that kind of give you an idea where I'm talking about now. And getting away from, that's the way we've always done it. The fire department is very, very thick in culture, very, very thick in, that's the way we've done it in the past. Unfortunately, with building codes, with the way buildings are being built nowadays, we have to make changes. A hate to say it this way, but for survivability for not only our customers, but also for firefighters. They burn hotter, etc. Another concern is our aging fleet. As you saw with the check marks, we're starting to get to that point where NFPA is saying, you can't use those. If you look at our equipment, it looks brand new. We use it a lot, but firefighters like to wash trucks. They keep them waxed, etc. Costs, as we said before, those costs are starting to go up to maintain them. A tire on a fire truck is not a passenger tire. It costs a lot more money. They're diesel vehicles. They're large-engined gasoline vehicles. So it's not like your car or your pickup truck or your truck. It takes a lot more money to get these to go out the door. It was quoted in one of the newspaper articles here recently, it costs $1 million to go out on every single run. Not quite, but we're pushing over $1,000 if you take everything into account per run when they go out that door. And it all depends on the size of the truck. It depends on the personnel, the training, and who's on that. But yeah, it costs a lot of money for that truck to go out the door. Let's talk about medical response. As we said, we go out on every single med run. Medical response, we get dispatched on. Fire has been on scene first 58% of the time. We're talking EMS versus fire. We're going to talk about this here in just a moment a little bit more. What do we have for our future, and what are we looking at? We would love to put a training center here that's going to help our people. It's going to train us and our group better, also pull people in. It's also going to be a moneymaker, which we're going to talk about here in a moment. Additional wildland teams. We have a federal wildland team here that goes out federally, locally, regionally, and fight wildland fires. We would like to add EMS service to our Cortez Fire Protection District. So we're the ones who have the EMS going out the door. Update our fleet, capital improvements, add a station. Our stations are starting to get old. Invest and secure in additional revenue streams. We're always looking. We're always looking. One of those things is sales tax, which we need assistance. Impact fees, which you'll hear more about here shortly. Grants, we're working on grants all the time. We're charging for our services. We're charging for a hazmat run. We can do that. We have specialized equipment. We have specialized training. So we're allowed to do that. Donations, and of course sales of goods. We sell signs, street signs, etc. These are the main revenue streams that we have. We're always looking for more. So, our financial state. At this point in time, Cortez Fire Protection District cannot continue in the financial state that we're in. You saw our numbers going up. The amount of money that it costs for us to run a fire department is going up. Our mill levy was from 2013-14. That's what we're working on. The money's from that mill levy. We're thinking about selling stations. We have to redo them, but maybe we're going to have to sell them. These are things that we've talked about, selling equipment, apparatus, getting less specialized training. And again, that's going to harm, I hate to say it that way, it's going to harm the citizens because they're not going to have that state-of-the-art going out the door. Laying off personnel, that's the last resort. That's the last resort. As a result of just these items, your ISO ratings are going to go up. That happens, insurance rates are going to go through the roof. Us having that fire truck that has a ladder on the top, the ladder truck, just that itself is huge for your insurance rates. Terminate fire with EMS runs. We have 3 different types of runs that go out the door. 1, 2, and 3. It depends on the severity of that call. We may just pull one of those away, or if we have to, pull everything away. We have an EMS system here, but if we have to be able to protect our citizens from fire, we have an EMS system. They don't have hoses and ladders on the EMS, we do. That's our specialty, so is EMS. Everyone is trained in EMS, so we assist. Reduction of response vehicles or personnel on calls, and I've already covered that. And again, that goes back to those ISO ratings. These are things that we do not want to do. I'm not going to say that we may get forced into that, but we don't want to close the doors of our fire department. And we're at that point now that we have to look at this and start selling things off. I'll open this up to any questions. Battalion Chief Spencer will be here with...
Yeah, and we have time for just a couple.
Sure, okay.
I have a really quick question. Are you involved with the CIP program? And if so, what impact does that have on the department?
Yes, we are involved with that, and I'm going to let Battalion Chief Spencer speak on that because he's the one who oversees that in the department.
So yes, we are involved with the CIP program. The EMTs that respond with the clinicians from Axis are our employees. They are housed at our Station 3 on North Dolores Road, and so they are there every day. And then we have direct oversight as far as the EMT side goes for day-to-day operations.
Okay, I'm going to ask a more complicated question that might have a non-answer, but from your perspective, why is the Cortez Fire Department so busy? And kind of to add on to that, is it normal for fire departments to go out on all the EMS calls? And is that mainly because of like you can get there faster or they need more support?
So yes, yes, and yes.
Okay.
We're in a unique area. And why we are so busy here, I don't know the answer. I don't know if that's because of the aging population, if that's because of the substance abuse, if it's because of people stealing electricity and causing house fires. It's people not getting their chimneys swept and causing chimney fires. So that's part of it. That answers the first question, I think. The second part of your question, it is a national standard for fire and EMS to respond together. And so that's why we have tried to model after that, that standard and respond to those EMS calls, because we have everybody that works on the fire department is an EMT, an advanced EMT, or a paramedic. And like Chief Wilkerson said in the presentation, 58% of the time we are arriving on scene first and providing those life-saving measures. I can tell you guys of 3 situations that I was involved with personally that we went to a cardiac arrest and saved the person. We were there first for several minutes on scene, and 2 heroin overdoses where we provided life-saving care and got those people back. And we were there for minutes prior to an EMS unit getting there. So if we weren't there, you or your family is going to be waiting those extra minutes on an ambulance to get there. And did you have a third part?
I have what might seem like a rather naive question, but I was just curious, do your firefighters wear masks when they are fighting fires?
Absolutely. And that's part of the NFPA standard that we try and keep up with. On that slide, an SCBA, or a self-contained breathing apparatus, is part of our everyday protective equipment that we wear when we go inside of burning buildings.
Good. Thank you. Good to know.
Thank you for your presentation, and I saw that you provided us all with cards. So again, council, if you have any follow-up questions, they can be directed to their email. Also, a request from Council Member Dobry is to have that presentation sent to us. Okay. If you could send that, I guess, to Drew, and then he can send that out to us. Okay. Thank you. Yep, thank you for the presentation. 15 minutes is not enough to chat about that. Okay. Next on our agenda, we have a presentation by Willa Williford, CHFA consultant, on final report for 7th Street housing assessment. Our apologies for running a little behind schedule.
Are you there?
Good evening. Yes, I am here.
Okay,
I'm trying to get there we go.
okay, so we're on Zoom and you're live on speaker and council is here even though you can't see them, they can see you and they can hear you. So I think we're ready to begin.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the opportunity to share the outcome of the CHFA Small Scale Technical Assistance. And let me just share my screen so that you all are seeing what I'm seeing. And then I also just wanted to note and welcome Chris Lopez, who I believe is in the room and is also part of this effort. So, hi, Chris. And so our intention this evening is just to share, to orient you to the report that we provided, take any feedback you may have prior to issuing a final report, and, entertain council discussion around desired next steps. I think, I'll jump to the chase on, I think this was both an exciting opportunity in Cortez, but also very sobering around the financing. So I'll just walk through kind of an overview and only take probably about 10 minutes of your time, and then we can have a discussion. So we began with a site, or sorry, this prior to our site visit, there was, of course, the needs assessment that was issued in last spring. And I think that that really informed and was underpinning the work here, because anything we'd want to do with this site related to housing, we would want to make sure was aligned with what the findings of the needs assessment. So the needs assessment had very healthy numbers around your growth and that you need a lot of housing. The trick there, of course, is always making that housing affordable to people who are working within your community. So we know that the price points we need to hit are, in the ranges represented in this table. 125,000 to 250,000 for a working household, for a for sale product, and about 1,000 to 2,000 for monthly rent for comparable households. So, as we got into the modeling, we were always thinking about those needs assessment findings. In terms of the site visit and design workshop, our team with the CHFA Small Scale Housing Program came to the site and met with really great cross-disciplinary team from the city, as well as a couple of neighbors and leaders in the community from Habitat for Humanity and some other groups. And we took a half day to talk through site constraints, desired outcomes, some of the lessons learned from prior efforts, and the exploratory work on soils conditions and all the things that go into the site, the different options for making street connections in the neighborhood. And then we all worked on preliminary design ideas, which portion of the site should be park, which portion of the site should be housing, how should those two relate to one another. And I think the consensus out of that was really, to acknowledge that we desire a park, but to keep that as a blank slate and something that's really independent of the housing project, knowing that if both things were built, they would complement each other. And to focus on the western portion of the site for housing. So the goals and guiding principles that came out of the work, I think, are very helpful regardless of what direction you take, because it seemed like it felt to me like there was fairly strong consensus around a number of themes, addressing the housing shortages in the community, really centering community buy-in and engagement in this neighborhood, and with the history of some stop-start efforts and disappointments. That wanting it to be financially feasible, something we're proud of for the long term, something where people really have a sense of connection and neighborhood, We talked a lot about the safety of connections and the whole issue of safe routes to school and how those are being extended through this part of town, and that our site could be a key link in that. A range of incomes and different walks of life. I think there was a really strong sense across the group that we didn't want this to be all of one thing or all of another when it came to housing. And that's tricky to do because a lot of the financing tools sort of do drive you towards more segregated approaches with housing, which is frustrating. And then, we didn't get too much into the park, but just acknowledging that it be of, high quality on par with other parks in the city, that there is a deficit of parks in this area, and that the maintenance, we're thoughtful about the maintenance of the park so that it isn't overly burdensome. In terms of, this was a place in the group where we didn't necessarily have a strong consensus because we were working in a little bit of a blank slate environment. So a range of 20 to 100 units was where different stakeholders were comfortable. And I think you can think about that in terms of phasing, in terms of density. Certainly where we landed is that with the portion of the site allocated to housing, it's pretty easy to fit 100 units. So getting to the high end of the range isn't hard from a density perspective. It may be hard from other angles though. So this is after a iterative process working with Rachel and her team through a couple of different design options. The one that we moved forward with to do financial modeling is shown here. So kind of strong neighborhood, traditional street connections, a mix of triplexes, townhouses, and a 24 unit multifamily building, which I think in the scale of this neighborhood is pretty good size. In the scale of multifamily would be considered a small multifamily building. And then, being able to connect with this sort of curvilinear Elm Street through the site. So once we got into financial modeling, we were playing with different versions that had ownership versus rent. And so in this sort of all for rent model, we were trying to hit a variety of rental price points across, 1 bedrooms to 3 bedrooms. All of this is very, it's just very preliminary, just testing initial feasibility. But that was a mix that we thought would be responsive to the housing needs assessment. Unfortunately, with construction costs where they are, and a pretty significant amount of site improvements that would be needed here, this comes out to a $43 million project, and we're only able to drive a debt to support about $22 million. We think that the Division of Housing would potentially be a good resource for about $5 million. And I see that there's a typo, I'm so sorry, there that should be 27 million of total sources. But regardless, you see that there's a big gap between the total development costs and the total sources. So, I think that was sobering, and, there's lots of different ways to attack this in terms of trying to, do a broader drive costs down, do a more market rate units, do work around, there's other tools that we didn't explore in this particular context, but they can be used, like the low-income housing tax credit. So this is not impossible, but we see that it's an uphill battle financially. We also played with, okay, well, what if a portion, what if we reserved that small multifamily building for rentals and the rest of the site was home ownership, and what might that look like from a total, what kind of sale price could we generate? And again, we're in a situation where when we try to match those sale prices with what the needs assessment says your community needs, our construction costs are higher, so we have a gap again. So we definitely have our work cut out for us in terms of solving the picture financially, but we have a basic framework within which to think about that. So in terms of next steps, we outline a much more extensive list in the report, but, continuing to seek funding and design solutions and cost-saving measures is certainly high on the list. I think that this was, from city leadership, this was a good idea around thinking about, what if we extended the utilities, extended the street, and then really looked to the private sector around what can happen in terms of the vertical housing development. And I think it's been clear from the jump, the city doesn't want to be in the housing development business, but if you made those improvements, could you catalyze some helpful things through public-private partnerships? I think the Housing Authority is certainly a good potential partner. And then underpinning all of this is continuing to do good work around engagement, community feedback, transparency, and clear expectations with the neighbors and other community members. So that concludes my brief presentation. We can circle back to anything you'd like to talk about, or we can just open it up for questions.
Any questions, Council? A lot to download.
I think that gap is the thing that I'm stuck on. I am surprised by that $15 million gap amount that was there. That really was surprising to me, and I really appreciate the fact that you heard accurately from city council and probably from Drew Sanders and other folks that it's really not the intention of the city to become developers, but those public-private partnerships are really kind of what we're looking at, especially given those numbers.
So I heard the part about, reflecting back that Cortez does not want to get in the business of housing development, but if there was a question, I missed it. It was a little bit choppy.
Yeah, just repeating when Councilmember said earlier that, he's recognizing that there's a big gap, that, financially, that we can see that in order to.
So, yeah, and I think, it's very illustrative of why this problem exists.
Can you go back to the last slide? I just wanted to see that again. Thank you. Okay. All right, any other questions? Council? Any other last comments from you, Willa?
No, I really appreciated the opportunity to work with you again. And, I want to certainly, our team with the CHFA technical assistance is available if there's follow-up. And Chris has, is a great resource in terms of connecting to, ongoing as, the rollout of Proposition 123 funding becomes more clear and other resources CHFA may have. So, if you do get down the road with wanting to do developer RFPs, we have templates for that. So, our scope of work is pretty, effectively completed as soon as we turn any final comments on the report. But we're not gone. We're here, still able to support you as needed.
Great. Thank you. Could we also have this presentation sent to us because it was kind of hard to view from down here?
Sure.
Thank you. All right. Next item on our...
Thank you. Have a good night.
Yeah, thank you. Sorry. Thank you. Take care. Next item on our agenda, we have council general discussion. Do we have any things that council would like to bring to conversation this evening? Since we still have our earlier presenters here, do we have any follow-up questions from council? Kind of putting you guys on the spot as well.
I have more questions for the fire department.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sticking around. We can ask a
Thank
couple more
you.
questions.
So when your crew goes out on wildland fires, like for the federal government, is that then paid for through whatever agency you're helping, like the Forest Service? And is that one reason, if you increase your wildland crews, you might be able to stabilize some funding?
Yeah, correct. So when we deploy on wildland fires, we are reimbursed from whether it's state or federal partners that we go out and deploy with, and that's nationwide. We've had trucks that have gone to California, Arizona, Colorado, New Mexico, Texas, so they go all over the country to help with fires.
I had a couple questions about just the runs that you're doing. Do you know about what percentage of runs are EMS as opposed to fire related?
I don't know the exact number, but probably over 80%.
80% EMS, okay.
So this hasn't snuck up on you. Hard question. How did we end up in such a position that we're now worried about funding? Has this been over many years? Is it just recently happened? What's the problem?
I think it's been over many years. And I think that there has been a lot of ideas that have come to the table, but we have never, up until last year, when we asked for an additional mill levy increase, there was a lot of ideas that were thrown around, but we never put traction on the road. There were a lot of wheels spinning, but there was never traction that was put on the road. And just the inflation with everything that has gone up, you know, a set of bunker gear 10 years ago, or even 4, 5, 6 years ago, was around $3,000, and now you're probably close to $3,800 to $4,000 for gear. It's just cost for everything has gone up.
Has the fire department looked to the future and realized they need to budget more, or do you only get a set amount of money and that is it?
We get a set amount of money, and that's set from our mill levy that we get through the property owners within our fire district, but we don't like that. And I'll be completely honest, we don't like that because, Mr. Sproul, when's the last time you called 911 to come to your house for something? Have you ever? Maybe, no. Maybe, but we have so many people who come to this area for our tourism attractions. Mesa Verde National Park sees over 500,000 people a year that go through that park. Our Walmart is a $90 million a year Walmart because we are having so many people who are coming from the reservation, from Utah, from all around here, Dove Creek, Rico, Telluride. They're coming down here to shop, and they're asking for our services when they get in a car wreck, or they're coming from New Orleans to Mesa Verde National Park and trying to hike, and then they get altitude sickness. Those are the people that are asking for us. So we wish we could do a sales tax because we feel like that would be the best for our department, because it's not putting 100% of the financial burden on the property owners. It's spreading that out amongst everybody who uses our service. And right now, per Colorado state law, we cannot do that.
Does the fire department have the ability to regulate what kind of EMS calls they respond to? For instance, accidents, heart attacks, absolutely respond. Transport to the hospital, do you have the ability to say, don't dispatch us to those kind of calls? You're saying you're receiving 80% of the EMS calls. When the ambulance shows up, it's costing money.
Sure.
But you guys don't get any of it.
Sure.
But you're responding.
Exactly. And we're responding because 58% of that time, we're getting there first. And so it is, I think there would be a lot of, it would take a lot, there would be a lot of discussion that would have to happen on figuring out, okay, we're going to go on this kind of call, but we're not going to go on that kind of call. And this one for sure, but that one's kind of iffy. The easiest thing is if we just go to everything, because that is the national standard. And again, I keep hitting on that 58, and it's not, that's not a dig on EMS by any stretch of the imagination. It's simply where they're responding from and where we're responding from. But 58% of the time, if you're the one who's called for emergency medical help, you want to see a uniform with gear coming through your door. And those 2 or 3 or 4 minutes has got to make a difference.
I absolutely agree. However, if you can't afford it, you
Correct.
can't afford it.
Exactly.
And if you're using 80% of your funding to support EMS, then something's going to have to break
Exactly.
somewhere.
Exactly.
And I have seen the fire department in action. They are absolutely fantastic. But I don't want it to get to the point where you can't respond to any call.
Sure.
Because you can't afford it. And you
Correct.
can't afford a ladder truck to fight a fire that's what you need to be doing because you're helping somebody with a broken leg and the ambulance is getting $340 and you're getting zero.
Correct. And that's where we're looking. And we don't want to, but that's kind of where we're looking.
I was just going to ask you and if you don't have it now, if you could send it to us, but could you give us the percentage calls that are in the city of Cortez as opposed to the fire district as a whole, and then the area, what percentage of the fire district is the city of Cortez?
I can give you hard square miles and
Yeah, that'd be
hard
great.
numbers.
Yeah.
So our response district is 169 square miles. 163 of those are taxing. So we cover Phil's World, that is BLM. We cover parts that are BLM going out west down County Road G to the Utah state line. Last year, we ran 3,771 calls. 2,866 of those calls were within the city limits of Cortez. So 169 square miles is what we respond to. Last year, we ran 3,771 calls, and out of those calls, uh, 2,788 were within the city limits of Cortez.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So we had the advantage of seeing your presentation and listening to you speak, and I think that we can kind of understand the need and the situation that you're in. We also know that mill levies oftentimes don't pass on the first go-around. What is your message to the public the next time you go for a mill levy, assuming that you are?
I would say that our message to the public would be if you like what you're seeing from the Cortez Fire Protection District and you want to continue to see that same level of service and training, that we need the support. The hard thing for us, and our budgets are on our website, so feel free to go look at those. And these are rough estimate numbers, so please don't quote me on these or put this in hard numbers. Our mill levy budget for this year is around 1.7 million. Our operating costs are around 3.2. And we're not doing anything special. We're simply trying to keep up with the NFPA standards and the codes and everything else. We're in a hard way. We had last October, being completely transparent, kind of knowing what we were looking at, we gave everybody a $10,000 increase because we had to. We had 2 firefighter positions that were open, and we had no applicants. We have a captain position open right now that's been open for 3 weeks. We have no applicants because we offer $64,000 a year for a frontline supervisor to come work for us and run 3,700 calls a year when they can go anywhere else in our area and make that as a firefighter. And we're asking somebody to come here and do that and make that kind of money as a frontline supervisor.
Do you get any federal funding through PILT, payment in lieu of taxes?
No, we do not.
So you're working the Wayne's World and all of that free?
For free. Phil's World. Not Wayne's World. That's a movie. That's a movie. Yes, that is correct. We are covering Phil's World. We're covering the BLM areas free of charge. We do not receive any PILT money. And we actually, this negligence on our side, but we just found out about PILT within the last 3 months. So we've started looking at that, but we do not receive any of that funding.
I think you need to really look into that because it's payment in lieu of taxes.
Correct.
We don't have a tax base there, so
Yep,
you need to really look into that.
correct.
And who manages like your grants that you're writing? Do you have a grant writer or do you contract or you?
We do.
Okay. And then also the kind of piggyback off what Matt was saying, I think we've heard from you guys, but can you explain kind of to the public and whoever's listening how your budget works?
No, you're doing great. You're the fire chief. I don't do the budget.
Battalion Chief Spencer spoke earlier. We have cut to the bone. We're nickel diming now. Most of it, like any fire department, is mainly on salaries or expenditures. Then comes operations. Training is in there, et cetera. And of course, we have insurance. And if you can just imagine with all the insurance and with insuring a firefighter and the equipment, as we had gone back, it's more expensive than your normal ladder, et cetera. Workman's comp, and the list goes on and on. It's just like a regular business, but unfortunately it's a little higher just because of the nature of the beast. So when it comes to our budget, yes, and we already talked about what we bring in. Mainly it's from property taxes. So what goes out is tight. I mean, we are cutting to the bone. We really are. We're looking at every avenue that we can to cut costs. But unfortunately, salaries are the big part of that. Again, like any business, like any fire department, and we're right in line with other fire departments when it comes to percentages. But unfortunately, in this area, it's not enough to be able to pull people in as firefighters to bring them to us. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Sure.
So I would just think that if you do go for another mill levy, maybe also approach and get some testimonials from people about their relationship or how you helped them out or you saved their home or saved them from, having a heart attack or one of those things. It just seems to me that, a scare tactic approach is not a good approach. I think people just don't respond well to that. But if they can, I think about the number of times I've seen you guys up and down my street, my very street where I live and parked across the street and those sorts of things. People can relate to that. But I think that, if this doesn't happen, we're going to close. That's not potentially a great message moving forward.
No, you're absolutely correct. We're just giving you what potentially could occur.
And last year, when we were going for our mill levy increase, we sent out, and I'm sure many people in the room received their Magellan Strategy survey. We worked with Magellan Strategies out of Denver to send out a survey. We had great feedback on that. We felt like we really had a chance at getting that mill levy passed. And then when it came time for November, it didn't happen. We tried putting flyers out. Trying to get the message out in our community is hard, and I think we all know that. We tried doing pancake breakfasts and hot dog lunches to have those conversations, Mr. Kiefhofer, that you're talking about. We had the pancake breakfast and maybe 5 people showed up. We printed flyers out, we put it on social media, we plastered flyers all over town for our hot dog lunch and had maybe 10 people show up. So that was money that we were spending out of the fire district's funds to try and get people to come in and talk to us about the issues that we're facing right now. And we got 0 turnout. In the grand scheme of things, we got very little turnout. So, and it's the mill levy again that we were going for was going to increase our revenue approximately $1 million a year. But if you look at our finances, when we're at 1.7 right now, another mill levy is only going to get us to 2.7, and our operating costs are already upwards of 3.2 and higher. So it wasn't even going to get us to the black. That's why we feel strongly about a sales tax and trying to figure out how to make something work with either you or county commission to get something like that going, because then it's not putting all the burden on the property owners. It's putting that financial burden on everybody who utilizes our services.
Correct.
And you guys don't have like an auxiliary, unit or like a Friends of or some sort of support organization that could help you get the word out or hold these events like a pancake breakfast and things? No.
We do not. If you're offering, I'd like to have more of a conversation with you. No, we do not have anything like that.
Can you guys speak to a little bit more to like the training center concept that you mentioned on one of the slides?
Sure. So currently, Montezuma County, the Montezuma County Fire Chiefs Association puts on a yearly fire academy, and that's countywide. So members from all of the volunteer organizations within the county, Cortez, the Ute Mountain Ute Fire Department, and RICO can send members to that, and we run that every year. It's actually probably going to go to every other year because we saw a decline in volunteerism. That's another big thing for us is volunteerism. People wanting to volunteer in the country is just going down. We've tested for volunteers every year that I've been back in Cortez full time, and that was 2018. 2023 is the first year that we did not test for volunteers. And in 2022, we got 5 volunteers. We lost 2 of them, and we have 3 now. So the training center, we're looking at, we've tried to start bringing things here. Last year, we hosted a big countywide extrication training that was funded by the Montezuma County Fire Chiefs Association. We would like to see an extrication area. We would like to build kind of a tech rescue area where, people can get into some confined space. We can do some high-angle rescue kind of stuff. Louis Areola has a burn tower, and they've been great on letting us utilize that burn tower for our live fire. That's another thing that we have to do every year is if you're a certified firefighter, you have to see live fire at least once a year in a training scenario. So they've been really good, but they make other towers where we can do, like I said, high-angle rescue, low-angle rescue, hoisting, that kind of stuff. Propane burn props, search houses, those kind of things is what we're looking at doing. And then bringing bigger trainings to Montezuma County. That's one thing that I've really tried to work on. Our captains and above have to have Fire Officer 1. It's a DFPC certification. There's 3 to 4 Fire Officer 1 classes that are offered every year throughout the state. That's not enough. So I've been in contact with the Division of Fire Prevention and Control to host one of those classes here, and it'll open it up to, Pagosa Springs, Alamosa, Durango, Bayfield, us, Telluride, Montrose, because those classes just aren't being offered enough statewide for everybody to get into.
Would there be, I don't know if this is something that could happen, but would there be a potential for collaboration with PCC and having some sort of channeling of potential, kind of students towards that type of training? Or I don't know if that could work in that regard. I'm just throwing it out there.
There has been. PCC does do the medical training. They do an EMT class, an advanced EMT class, and a paramedic class. Chief Wilkerson and I went out there and spoke to the paramedic class about coming to work for us once they get their paramedic. So we have some collaboration with that. But the hard thing with PCC is because we offer all the same types of classes that they would in the county for free, it's hard for them to start doing that through the college when those are things that we already do in the county for free.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions?
Yeah, I was just curious if you do any programs or have relationships with the local schools to kind of create maybe some career opportunities and open the door for local youth in the community.
100%. I will say right now, currently, no. I got my start as a junior firefighter in Castle Rock when I was 15, and we have a firefighter who works for us right now. It's called a junior program, so they're junior firefighters. It can be from ages 15 to 18, and they can ride along on the fire trucks. They get bunker gear. It's out of service gear, so they're not going into working house fires and stuff, but they can come and see firsthand what we do on a daily basis. One of our firefighters that's coming to work tomorrow started as a junior with us when he was 15, graduated, took his EMT class his senior year of high school, graduated high school, worked for our wildland team that summer, went to the fire academy that winter, and got hired with us full-time that December. So we do have that, and we do love that we have that. It's not happening currently. COVID put a crunch on that. And because we've had so many changes as far as administration and financial struggles and things like that right now, we have put that on hold, but we are going to bring that back sometime this year.
All right, any last questions, council? Okay, thank you for being willing to come up again and answer our questions. We're really grateful for that.
We appreciate it.
All right, unless there's any other council discussion, we will go ahead and adjourn the work session, and we will come back at 7:30.